In sports, there are some debates that are just timeless, the ones you have with your friends that go on forever. But then there are the what-ifs that kind of break your brain. And today, we're tackling one of the biggest. Could three absolute basketball gods, we're talking the most dominant players ever, actually take down a modern five-man super team? This is pure talent versus cold, hard math, and we are going to find out which one comes out on top. Now, let's be super clear about this. This isn't just about who has more skill. No, this is about legendary individual willpower versus an evolved strategic system. It's a clash of different eras, of totally different basketball philosophies, and honestly, it's a fight against the fundamental physics of the game itself. Okay, so first things first, let's meet the contenders in this hypothetical showdown. On one side, you've got a trio of icons who, they literally defined what greatness looks like. And on the other, a five-man wrecking crew that represents the absolute peak of modern basketball. Just look at these two squads. First, the trio, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James. You've got three guys who are masters of taking over a game, of bending it to their will through sheer force. Then you've got the modern quintet, Jokic, SGA, Giannis, Luka, and Tatum. Now, these aren't just five random superstars. This is a system on legs, built to create and exploit space like never before. And make no mistake, the legend of this trio isn't just hype. It's backed by some absolutely staggering numbers. We're talking about peak physical specimens. A 48-inch vertical for Jordan? That's just absurd. And when the pressure was highest in elimination games, both LeBron and MJ averaged over 31 points. These guys were certified killers. But see, the modern team, they don't play that same game. They fight with strategy, and their number one weapon is the five-out offense. All that means is every single one of their five players is a threat to shoot from the outside. This pulls the defense apart, stretching the court until it's about to snap. And with genius-level passers like Jokic and Luka running the show, well, they're designed to find the one open guy and make you pay instantly. And that right there brings us to the core problem for our legends, because this isn't just about who's more skilled. It's a battle against geometry. The basketball court itself becomes the biggest opponent. So it all comes down to this concept called defensive load. It's actually pretty simple. Just think of it as the slice of the court each player has to cover. In a normal 5-on-5 game, that space is manageable. But when you take two defenders off the floor, the whole equation just completely falls apart. So here's the baseline. In a regular half-court set, each defender is responsible for about 940 square feet of space. For a pro athlete, that's totally doable. You can cover that ground, close out on shooters, and recover. Now look at what happens to our trio. Their defensive load just explodes to over 1,500 square feet per player. That's nearly a 70% increase in the real estate they each have to guard. This isn't just difficult, it's pretty much a geometric impossibility. And you can see the physical toll right here. The average NBA player runs about 2.5 miles per game. In this absolute nightmare scenario with zero subs, the trio would be forced to run over 4 miles a game, just scrambling to cover all that empty space. The fatigue wouldn't just be a factor, it would be catastrophic. And here is exactly how the modern team would weaponize all that space. It's a simple drive, kick, swing. Shai drives to the basket, forcing one defender, let's say Jordan, to step up and stop him. Fine, but Shai just kicks it to an open teammate. Now Kobe has to scramble across the court to cover. That teammate immediately swings it one more time, and boom. Just like that, LeBron is left all alone on an island, trying to guard 3 elite players by himself. It's an unwinnable tactical disaster. So the math looks really bad. The logic seems totally solid. But what if talent can be so ridiculously overwhelming that it just breaks the system? Because, believe it or not, we've actually seen something like this happen. We got to travel back to November 2017. A college basketball game between Alabama and Minnesota gets really, really weird and ends up giving us one of the most incredible stretches of basketball you'll ever see. And in this crazy story, there's a tiny glimmer of hope for our 3 legends. So here's what happened. After a bench-clearing scuffle, a ton of ejections, someone fouling out, and a freak injury, Alabama was forced to play the final 10 minutes and 41 seconds with only 3 players on the court against Minnesota's 5. Logically, this should have been an absolute bloodbath. But this is where the story gets completely insane. In that 3-on-5 stretch, the tiny Alabama squad, led by future NBA guard Colin Sexton, who just went berserk, actually outscored the five-man Minnesota team 30-22. They almost won the game. It was a pure miracle of sheer will, just defying all the numbers. So, does this miracle prove the trio could pull it off? Well, not so fast. When you look back at that game, Minnesota got lazy. They got complacent. They stopped running their system and just figured they'd win. A professional team of basketball geniuses like Jokic and Luka, they would never make that mistake. They would relentlessly and surgically exploit that 5-on-3 advantage until the very last second. That Alabama story is an incredible anecdote, but it's just that, one story. To get a real data-backed answer, we have to move past history and get into the numbers. We need to actually simulate this epic showdown. And analysts have done exactly that. They used a powerful tool called a Monte Carlo simulation, which is basically a way to play this hypothetical game 10,000 times. It lets you factor in all the key variables to see what would most likely happen over a giant sample size, basically taking luck out of the equation. Now, for this to be realistic, the simulation had to include some really key factors. First off, fatigue. The trio's offensive efficiency was programmed to drop off as the game went on. Makes sense, right? Meanwhile, the five-man team, who can sub players in and out, their efficiency stays constant. And crucially, it also factored in the massive rebounding advantage the five-man team would have. And after 10,000 simulated games, the results are pretty decisive. The modern quintet wins a staggering 74% of the time. The legendary trio, they managed to pull off the miracle upset in just 22% of the simulations. So while it's not impossible, the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against them. 74%. I mean, that is a massive, massive margin. So the last question is just, why? What is the fundamental principle here that gives the system such a huge advantage over that kind of transcendent talent? Let's break it down. Well, ultimately, it comes down to cold, hard, simple math. Michael Jordan could be an absolute master of the mid-range shot, hitting an incredible 50% of them. That generates exactly 1 point every time he shoots. But a modern player, shooting a pretty good, but not even great, 40% from three, well, that generates 1.2 points per shot. Over a whole game, that tiny difference becomes a massive, insurmountable gap. And this really brings us to the final crucial takeaway. It doesn't matter how fast, how strong, or how brilliant a player is. They can't defeat the dimensions of the court itself. The space. The space is the real MVP. It's the ultimate defender that never ever gets tired. So in the end, the data is pretty clear. Legends like Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron, they create these unforgettable moments, these flashes of individual brilliance that we'll talk about forever. But the game of basketball, at least in its modern form, is a system. And the numbers show that over the long run, the system almost always wins. It's really a battle between the unforgettable moment and the unbeatable math. And it makes you wonder, which one are we really rooting for?